I made $10,000 on my first wholesale deal, and here's how I did it. So it started a little over a year ago when I was broke, confused, lost in life, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I did know that I wanted some semblance of freedom. I didn't want to have a boss breathing down my neck, and that's about the time that I found a video about wholesaling real estate, just like this one. Now that video ended up helping me turn my entire life around, put me on a brand new path that I've grown to love. So now I'm gonna walk you through my first deal. So leading up to my first wholesale deal, I spent months getting hung up on, refining my processes, developing new scripts, getting cussed out, working 15-hour days and having nothing to show for it. I was at the point where I was almost ready to give up. I was exhausted, defeated, deflated, and everything in between. In fact, the partner that I started this with eventually did give up. So after 2 months of trials and tribulations and failures, I finally landed my first deal. So first, where I found that deal. So at this point, 2 months into wholesaling and failing on market, I decided to start pulling lists off of PropStream. So for this list, it was one of the first ones I ever pulled. It was a pre-foreclosure list in a county outside of Chicago that had a lot of properties, but wasn't really well known, and I had no idea how I was gonna be able to find a buyer for it, but I pulled it anyways. So me and my then partner, we started texting all of these pre-foreclosure leads one by one, saying, hey, I see you're in pre-foreclosure, etc., etc. And this guy Cole happened to respond and tell me that he was open to selling his house. Knowing very little, I did know I needed to get him on the phone, talk to him, and start building rapport. So I called him up, he answered, and we started building rapport. So basically, I didn't really bring up his house or the price of his property or anything like that. I just let him talk about his specific situation, which turned out he was facing foreclosure. He had 4 kids. He had no wife at home with the kids. It was just him, and he was getting ready to lose his job and subsequently his house. So obviously he was in an extremely stressed and situation, and he needed help to get out of it. I literally just sat back and asked him, what can we do to help you? He went on to tell me that he was about 2 months away from his house actually getting foreclosed on and going to auction. For me to help, it would just be to help get him out of that jam, get him out of his foreclosure in a timely fashion to help him save his house, or at least walk away with some money. So I was able to talk to him. We kind of came to, an agreement on price. He owed like $150,000. He wanted like $170,000, so he could walk away with a little something and get an apartment for him and his kids to rent out, which I'm totally fine with because my goal is to have nobody become homeless. I'm here to help people, not screw people over. So after talking for a little bit, I needed to see his property, but he lived about 3 hours away from where I did in Illinois. So I came up with the ingenious idea of having him do a video walkthrough of his house on his phone while we FaceTimed, and I screen recorded the FaceTime. Now, when you're wholesaling, you're gonna run into all sorts of issues like this, because at first I didn't know how I was gonna look at the house. I ended up calling him back with this idea, so it's all about problem solving. Now, as he's walking through his house, this is my first wholesale deal. I did not even know what I was looking for. I was watching like, oh, that looks nice. This looks good. Oh, that doesn't look too bad. And it seemed like a pretty decent house, nice single family home, needed some cosmetic updates and a few things fixed. But I really didn't know what I was looking at too much, and I wasn't great at estimating rehab costs like I am now. So I was pretty much just winging everything. And when you're first starting out, you have to be okay winging stuff because that's all you're gonna be able to do. Nobody's gonna be an expert when they first start, and if you wait till you're an expert to start, you're never gonna start. So he's showing me around his house on the FaceTime. I come to the conclusion it probably needs about $15,000 in work conservatively, which I think ended up being a little bit low, but it actually wasn't too far off, surprisingly. And we decided to get it under contract. Now, this is the first time I sent a DocuSign to somebody, so I had to learn that too. Again, I was nervous. I didn't want to mess up. I think I read through my contract like 15 times before I hit send, every single word to make sure it was okay, compare it with, some of the gurus' contracts and make sure I was doing everything right. Again, if you guys want my contracts, comment contracts, please, down below in the comments, and I'll take care of you. So we get the DocuSign signed. It's now officially under contract, and I start panicking. Now, for many of you, I'm sure you've been told to find buyers ahead of time and line up buyers before you look for deals. I was in the school of Jerry Norton, who always said, find a good deal and the buyers will come. Again, this is when I first started, so in about June of 2022 when I had this deal locked up. So the market was really good and it wasn't as hard to find buyers as it is right now. So I just dove into finding deals and I figured I'd be able to find a buyer. Nonetheless, the panic set in immediately upon him signing the contract. I didn't really know what to do. I knew I was going to post it on Facebook. I pulled a list of cash buyers from PropStream and started contacting them because at this point, I know I only have about 10 days, I think I put on the inspection period. And if I lose it, I don't really have the money to lose this earnest money. I would have been kind of screwed. So after, putting it on Facebook, I had a few bites, but actually nothing really. And I contacted all the PropStream leads, and I got a few people that were interested in coming to check it out. So I decided to do what I had heard online and set up a showing for all the interested parties to come and check it out at the same time, build a little sense of competition, also make it so I don't have to impose on the seller multiple times. And we actually had a pretty decent turnout. We had a few people that agreed to show up. So this brought apart my next anxiety-inducing moment. I didn't know if I needed to be there or if I could just have all the buyers come and let the seller of the property show them around. Now, a lot of people for virtual wholesales, they'll hire a boots on the ground, or they'll just have the seller or the real estate agent show the house to the buyers. But for me, it was my first wholesale deal. I was completely broke and my money piles were dwindling. And I figured, fuck it, we're just gonna drive out to the property. I don't care if it's a 6-hour round trip, and we're gonna go secure our deal. And thank goodness we did, because this little Italian man named Piero tried to steal my deal out from under me. Like I said, first wholesale deal, didn't know what I was doing. All the buyers could tell I was new. I was just, kind of sequestering the seller away from them so they couldn't talk to him, while simultaneously trying to answer questions about a house, and I don't even know what some terms mean. It was an extremely anxiety-filled, pressure-filled situation, and again, I had pretty much no money left in my bank account, and I needed this to go well. So I have all the buyers check it out, answer their questions to the best of my ability, try my best not to sound like a freaking idiot. Towards the end of the showing, the last person there is this Piero guy. Now, first of all, let me back up. Piero rolls up in a beaten down pickup truck, pants up to his nipples, pencil in his ear. He's about 5'2", license plate says Chow. Ridiculous. So this guy, right before the showing's over, he pulls me aside and he's like, "Hey, yeah, it's a nice house, nice house. You find a lot of houses? Yeah, this is a nice house, nice house. Your number's way off. I'll give you 100,000. Mind you, we're asking for 185,000. Tells me he'll give me 100. I told him I couldn't do it. He said, there's no way anybody's gonna buy the property for what I'm asking, and I'm screwed pretty much. Kind of chuckles, gets in his pickup truck, he's gone. The next day, I get a call from the seller who informs me that this Piero guy called him after he left, told him that, hey, if he just waits till my contract with him expires, he could get him more money, and quite literally tried to snake the deal out from under me. Now, this is my first wholesale deal, and now this obviously put in my head that this is how every deal is going to go, and everybody's a piece of shit. Luckily, that has proved not to be the case, but you should still always be careful. Luckily, I had built such great rapport with Cole throughout the initial process of wholesaling his property that he called me immediately, informed me of this, said that that guy sounded like an ass. We were able to just cut ties with him altogether right then, and disaster averted. Now, if I hadn't built great rapport with him, if he hadn't trusted me, or he had thought that he could get a better deal, then I might have been screwed and lost out on this money, and who knows where my life would have ended up. Now, the crappy part is none of those buyers ended up being willing to pay me what I wanted for the house, but I did have one final buyer that hit me back that I had found on PropStream who wanted to go see the house. And again, this time I asked my old partner, who I started the company with, if he could drive me all the way out there, and I went out to see the property again. This guy ended up being our cash buyer that closed on the deal, thank goodness, but at this point I'd driven 12 hours total, there and back twice, to get this deal closed and protect my money. All right, so we got the buyer lined up, we signed an assignment contract, I opened up escrow with a real estate attorney, and I had all the documents and earnest money submitted to him. Now, things got even more stressful because the seller stopped answering his phones. He'd come up with excuses why he couldn't talk, he wouldn't get back to me. At one point, I went an entire 7 days without speaking to this man at all, and I was calling him 2-3 times a day. So at this point, I'm nearly in tears, like, oh, this deal's not gonna close. I just put all this work into it. I spent all the last of my money on gas, and my mind is literally exploding. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So eventually, I keep pestering this guy, for lack of better words, and he eventually starts answering his phone again. I actually had to renegotiate the price. So now that he's come back to answer his phone, I gotta tell him I gotta give him less money because my buyer wasn't quite able to pay what we needed to. So I got him down about $7,000. So he was still able to walk away with, I think, 22 grand after it was all said and done. I was able to make just under 10 grand when it was all said and done. And the buyer was able to get the property that he wanted at a good price. So I get the seller in line, the buyer's ready to go, and the deal finally closes. Which brings up the last obstacle that also is anxiety inducing. I'm pacing around at my dad's house waiting for this money to hit my bank account. At this point, there's $17, 17, in my bank account left to my name. That's it. And this is less than a year ago, mind you. This is about June 2022. So I'm over visiting my dad. I'm pacing around his kitchen. Family's over. I'm not talking to them. I'm staring at my phone, texting this attorney, hey, why isn't the money posted? He keeps giving me excuses as to why he can't send me the money, why I'm gonna have to wait a week, why I'm gonna have to wait 2 weeks, telling me this isn't how business is done. You can't demand the money right away. I'm thinking, if escrow closed, the money should be sent straight to me. This doesn't make sense. So now I think he's starting to screw me over. So after probably 2 hours of back and forth over text, spam calling him and him not answering the phone either, which is driving me crazy, I'm texting him threats, telling him I might sue him, etc., etc. And finally, he sends me the money. So my bank account goes from $17 to about $9,800 or something like that. And life is good. You know, it was the best feeling that was directly following probably the worst feeling, thinking I was gonna get screwed over, and it was just a whirlwind of emotions. So now that I made the money, what did I do with it? So out of the roughly $10,000, I paid myself about $3,000. I set aside about $2,500 for taxes. I used $500 to buy my partner out of the company completely, because at this point he basically wasn't really helping me much anyways. And I invested every other penny back into the business. I hired a VA, got a new texting and calling platform, refined my scripts and processes, spent a lot of time automating things and kind of getting things in a set regimented process, which led to me making $90,000 in assignment fees over the next 8 months. So clearly it was money well spent. You know, when you're just starting out, it's gonna be hard to not want to go buy, you know, a new car if your assignment fee's big enough, or, you know, send money to X, Y, and Z, or take somebody here, there, or wherever. But you really need to reinvest into yourself, because otherwise, if I didn't, every single deal I did after that would have been the same stressful grind, the same, you know, unsureness, the same anxiety levels. It never would have improved and got better. So I knew if I just didn't spend any money really, I gave myself $3,000 for bills, but I invested the rest back into it so my processes could be better and everything could get easier going forwards. Now, closing this first deal meant so much more to me beyond just making $10,000. I needed the money, I wanted the money, but what it really did was offer proof of concept, proof that wholesaling real estate works, proof that I could do it, and proof that I could generate money out of nothing with no help from anybody. You know, nobody paid me to work for them. Nobody had a business in place that I stepped into. Nobody pointed me in the right direction. I simply, just using my own mind and ingenuity, was able to figure out a way to generate $10,000 with nothing. And you know, that's a really superb feeling that is gonna just really open up doors, open up your mind into how being an entrepreneur is and how you can really make it in this life while being your own boss. The way I see it, if you work for somebody else, you are never truly free. And that's something that me personally, I refuse to ever do again. So you're in Jamestown now. Relax, take some notes, and let's make some money.